Hello everyone, I'm Jessica Blackbird. Welcome to my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. Those are free ways to help my little channel grow. Thank you. So you guys, according to foxnews.com, Army injustice, thousands of soldiers, veterans slapped with misleading criminal records. A decade after the Army ended a recruiting program embroiled in accusations of fraud and mismanagement, more than 2,400 soldiers who were never charged with wrongdoing are likely shackled by a misleading flag on their criminal records. We are branded as criminals, Army Captain Gilberto de Leon told Fox News. There were times where I broke down on my knees, my career ruined, about to lose my pension. How am I going to support my family of 8? Soldiers and veterans say they've lost jobs, been denied bank loans or weapons permits, and suffered other consequences because of an obscure Army process that treats anyone who is merely investigated for wrongdoing as guilty. I did nothing wrong, said South Carolina Army National Guard Captain Benjamin Sterneman, who was several years into a career as a police officer when the flag popped up on his background check. I was never arrested and never charged, and I lost my job anyway. The soldiers' saga started in 2005 at the height of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. The U.S. military needed more bodies, so it started the National Guard Recruiting Assistance Program and its smaller Army Reserve counterpart. The programs created thousands of temporary recruiters overnight, offering $2,000 for each person they steered toward the Guard. All they had to do was talk to somebody for a few minutes and submit their name so that an actual recruiter could get them in the door, Sterneman said. If they shipped to basic training, the recruiting assistants got paid. So they're saying they were offered $2,000 for each person that they could help steer into the recruiting office. And if that person made it to basic training, they'd get paid $2,000 for each recruit. So that sounds excellent for, a soldier that would supplement their income. Man. Sterneman said he referred 3 people and he was paid $6,000 while attending the University of South Carolina around 2010. De Leon participated between 2007 and 2009, collecting $11,000 for 6 recruits. The programs, by all accounts, worked fantastic, lawyer and retired Green Beret Doug O'Connell said. The Army enlisted more than 150,000 new recruits and reported spending around $459 million on the programs. But GRAP, which is the, let's see, which one is that called? GRAP is the National Guard Recruiting Assistance Program. So GRAP came under scrutiny in 2012 and the Army ended the program. Federal investigators found the Army had contracted with a company called DocuPack to run the programs in a process that met almost none of the federal acquisition requirements, USA Today reported. The National Guard Bureau officer who awarded the contract later went to work for DocuPack. An Army audit found thousands of participants who were associated with payments that are at high or medium risk for fraud, said Senator Claire McCaskill, a Democrat from Missouri, said during a scathing 2014 hearing demanding answers from the Army. As if all that was not bad enough, the Army has determined in its investigation that the entire program was illegal from the beginning, McCaskill said in the hearing, noting that the payments exceeded limits Congress had placed on bonuses the Army could pay. All of the money spent on the program was illegal. The Army vowed to investigate all 106,364 people paid by the recruiting program and launched Task Force Raptor, believed to be its biggest investigation in history. Critics of the probes argue that the Army's Criminal Investigation Division agents made sloppy cases against the recruiting assistants, accusing them of stealing personal information from recruits they had never met and collecting payments as if they had referred them to the Guard. Former recruiting assistants and their lawyers say CID cold called troops as much as a decade after the fact and asked if they remembered who referred them to the Guard. If they didn't say the recruiting assistant's name, the investigators assumed the recruiting assistant was guilty of criminal misconduct, which is absolutely ridiculous, said O'Connell, who has represented around 225 GRAP participants in both civil and criminal cases. In many cases that I've worked on, we've been able to prove the recruiting assistant didn't do anything wrong once they were shown a picture of my client. Army leadership told Congress in 2014 that Task Force Raptor might uncover as much as $100 million in fraud. 3 years later, the Army revised that estimate to $6 million after spending around $28 million on the investigation. Ridiculous, right, you guys? Wow. As of 2022, Task Force Raptor resulted in just $478,000 repaid to the U.S. Treasury and $58,403 in fines and fees, according to Army data. The Army refused 1,503 cases referred 1,503 cases to civilian authorities. Prosecutors pursued charges in 137 of those cases. Most district attorneys would not touch these cases because they were so tainted with cookie-cutter interrogations, phone interviews, and poor documentation, Sternman said. But thousands of soldiers who were never charged with a crime and in many cases had no idea they'd been under investigation became unexpected casualties of Task Force Raptor. Branded as criminals, Sternman was several years into a career as a police officer when he applied for a concealed weapon permit in 2018. He received a denial notice by mail and contacted licensing officials to ask why. When he received a copy of his background check, he stared in shock at the single entry, arrest date 2016-03-02. The 3 charges followed: aggravated identity theft, wire fraud, and fraud. I was never arrested, never charged, he told Fox News. I had no idea that this had occurred. During Task Force Raptor, the Army titled 2,580 soldiers, according to the data shared with Fox News. Titling is a process within CID that creates a permanent record showing a soldier was the subject of an investigation regardless of whether they are ever charged with a crime. Then the Army forwarded that information to the FBI's criminal database, where the titles show up as an arrest, O'Connell said. This is one of the most tragic parts of this entire debacle, O'Connell said. All these people who are simply titled now have a criminal history that is wrong and illegal because they said that these soldiers and former soldiers were actually arrested or received into custody. And of course, they were never arrested. 53 soldiers and veterans affiliated with GRAP asked CID to remove the title from their record as of 2021. The Army denied every single request, according to data an advisor for a U.S. senator shared with Fox News on the condition of anonymity. Army spokesman Matt Leonard said 10 more people asked the Army to remove their titles in fiscal year 2022. The soldiers and former soldiers who stood up and volunteered to serve and protect our Constitution are now being treated as criminals without any kind of due process rights, O'Connell said. The presence of what looks like a pending felony charge on Sturman's record meant he couldn't renew his police credentials. His department fired him in 2019. There was nothing they could do, he said. They could no longer employ me because they have to have a credentialed law enforcement officer with a clean record. Many jobs and professional licenses require applicants to pass a background check. O'Connell says he's represented real estate agents, physician assistants, police officers, and other professionals who have had their lives upended by the titling system. These former soldiers that are now trying to get on with a different career are still having to deal with the horrors of GRAP, he said. So it goes on, you guys. And it's just sad. This article is quite long, so I'm not going to continue with it. But you guys can pick it up on foxnews.com online. And there's also a report by Fox News on YouTube. But I wanted to bring this to you and how this is destroying lives. These men and women put their lives on the line for this country and all of us, actually. They went to war. They were recruiting because they were offered a chance to make extra money, and they did not know what they were doing was illegal. And actually, all they were recruiting assistants was talking to someone. And if that person ended up signing on and making it to basic training, they were given $2,000 per person that joined. So recruiting people or just sending people, into a recruiting office, you can't force them to do that. They have to say, yeah, I would love to join the Army. And it would seem that there was nothing wrong with that, right? Well, these guys, these men and women are innocent and their lives are being torn apart. They're losing jobs. How are they going to support their families if they don't have a clean record? They were never charged, never arrested. They didn't even know what was going on until they lost their job or couldn't get a job because they are shown to be criminals. Like, really horrible, underhanded, thievery is what it's shown like they committed. And it's not true. So it's really sad how veterans are treated in this country, right? They go and put their lives on the line for the United States, and they get treated like shit beneath the shoe of the U.S., right? So I hope they fix this for these people because it's just not fair. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments.